Hello, everybody. Man, was that not an amazing movie? Oh, I hope everybody there enjoyed the film. But before we get into discussing Emancipation, which, man, I'm still trying to collect my thoughts. Amazing movie. I wanted to say that, unfortunately, I'm not able to be there with you guys in person. Unfortunately, there were some issues with my flight leaving the South due to bad weather, so I couldn't be with you in person to break this dynamic movie down. Wow. Let's jump into the movie. So, most of you guys who know me, my name is Milton 510. That's my artistic signature, Milton Bowens. I'm a visual artist, fine artist. As you look around the theater, you'll notice a few paintings of mine that actually hang on permanent display here in the Guild. If you're sitting in the audience and you look immediately to your left, you'll notice that one of the paintings is actually a painting that is in line with the movie that you just saw, Emancipation. It's on the 1st Colored Regiment of Union troops. The painting is actually entitled I Pledge Allegiance, which I think actually goes with the narrative of what this film, Emancipation, is speaking of. The first thing I want to say is there's this thing going around social media and in some, print publications and in the mainstream press about, do we need another slave movie? And I just want to put that immediately to rest. These films and films like Emancipation are not slave films. That does our ancestors a disservice. Our ancestors were enslaved Africans, but they were not slaves. This movie is a story of faith, family, love, and perseverance. Much like many of the other films that deal with this historical Holocaust, sometimes it's hard to escape the brutality. So people don't want to relive that trauma. And that's clearly understandable. But the trauma of the transatlantic slave trade is what makes that vicious form of slavery one of the most despicable acts ever carried out in world history. So to not address that is also doing our ancestors a disservice because we don't fully understand what the brutality and the pain that was being inflicted on these enslaved Africans, what they had to not just endure, but overcome. And man, you just witnessed an amazing story of perseverance and overcoming obstacles. And I think Will blew it, he knocked it out the park. I mean, an amazing performance. Antoine Fuqua, man, that brother. I mean, as an artist, when you're looking at this movie, you get sucked in by the story, by the intrigue, but the cinematography. To me, it seemed like when you look at old historical photos and you see them in these, off-tone or sepia tone images, I thought the cinematography, the brilliance of the way Antoine Fuqua basically brought that old photo to life. It was like it animated it and brought it into, full live action for us. And speaking of that, the character that Will plays in this movie, Whipped Peter, is arguably the first viral image ever. I mean, you have to remember, cameras were just invented during this time, during the Civil War. And so, Peter, after all he went through to make it to this Union stronghold, this Union camp, And during the physical, they actually take this photo. But this photo becomes the spark that goes around the world that actually puts an image to the brutality of the transatlantic slave trade. So it can be argued that it was actually the first viral video. So when you think about this particular story, Emancipation, and you think about it in context to the greater picture of the African-American struggle, African Americans have been building patriotic capital since the Revolutionary War. And you look at the heroism, the bravery, the courage of the colored soldiers during the Civil War. And to think that President Lincoln, when he signed the Emancipation Proclamation, we're talking about January 1963. But we all know now that real freedom, the conversation, real liberation, this conversation doesn't actually even begin to get started until June 19th, 1865. So we all know America has an issue with their math, because when we look at the dates, things just don't align. 1619, 1776, 1863, 1865. So the goal is never to just romanticize the past, but you can use the past as a blueprint for understanding, growth, and hopefully generating change. History, it just isn't the past. When we always think of history and we think, oh, that's the past, that's a long time ago. But history is actually the present, and it can actually dictate, influence, and guide the future. So, for example, recently, in the news, there's conversation about how the media didn't really cover the photo that surfaced of Cowboys owner Jerry Jones when he was young, 14 years old, protesting the first black students that were trying to get into school in Little Rock, Arkansas. So one thing that I don't want people to overlook when we talk about history and we look at films like Emancipation and we're discussing the relevance of history in this time and place is that it's a reminder that this history is not as old as one would lead us to believe. There's arguments that curators have, there's debates, there's discussions that goes over being in the arena of fine art. I take a different perspective when I look at these issues, because there's a reason why you see a lot of photos during the civil rights era depicted in black and white when color photography existed. And some would ask you, well, why do we always see these images of Malcolm and Martin and Rosa Parks, and they're depicted in black and white? It's people think that by connecting something in black and white will make you believe that it happened a very long time ago. Now, that's the brilliance, I think, that Antoine Fuqua pulled out in this film. This film, the cinematography is not quite black and white. It has color. It is shot so beautifully that it not only gives you this aura or this essence of the past, but it keeps you relevant in the presence with the brilliance and the clarity of the way this film is shot. The one thing that, I hope everybody takes away from this experience, and I would encourage everybody to have a continued dialogue. It's healthy, in this country. People have died and fought for the rights to be able to have these discussions and have these debates. And it's okay if we all don't see eye to eye on one particular point or from a certain perspective. That's fine. But I would hope people have continued dialogue and examine these wonderful stories, because for some people, I know it's somebody sitting in this audience that has never heard of this story before. See, because I use history in my work, I have become very familiar with a lot of these historical images because I use them in my actual compositions. So when I stumble upon these stories that seem like, they have never been told. They exist. But sometimes, if it's like, there's a bunch of quotes out there that talk about, if you want to keep something from somebody, put it in a library, because, they're roughly saying that people are not going to go read and investigate. So I know, sitting in this audience, there's somebody who didn't know about this story, probably may never have seen the image of whipped Peter. And that's okay, because now you have. And once you've been exposed to these quote unquote unsung heroes of American history, once you've been exposed to these lost stories, encourage someone else to go see the film. Have dialogue about the movie. Further investigate the story. See where it goes. Because like I said, this is a film, but it is based on a true story. There's a quote that I want to close out on. It's a Negro folk secular quote. The origin is not really known, but it says, "Freedom don't mean much if you can't wrap your arms around it." Now think about that and reflect on the reunion that Peter had as a Union soldier when they liberated the plantation that his family was on. Freedom don't mean much if you can't wrap your arms around it. Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the film. Like I said, I think Will Smith, Antoine Fuqua, and the whole team that put Emancipation together did an amazing job. Thank you, St. Hope, the Guild Theater, Fixin' Soul Kitchen for putting this event together. And I believe you guys are going to be going over to a reception at Fixin's. Man, I wish I was there, because the catfish is off the hook. Thank you guys very much, man. This is Milton 510. It's been a pleasure to be here with you guys this evening. I appreciate you. Stay safe. And again, thank you.